Now that you've done all of your research and you've been analyzing it, we're writing it up. And one of the things that you are going to have to write up is the methods section of your paper. This is the section of your paper where you're going to describe how you did your research before you give us the results of your research. In a paper that you're writing for COM 499, this would be about 4 to 8 paragraphs in length. Now for COM 300, this will probably be on 1 or 2 PowerPoint slides. So you're not going to write it up for COM 300 in a paper format, but you're going to give this basic information on some PowerPoint slides. What it is giving some instructions about how you accomplished your research. So if somebody else wanted to do this research again, they could be able to replicate your method. So there are a few aspects that you want to address in your method section. Now you may not address all of the things that I'm going to include, but you're going to address most of these in either your paper or your PowerPoint slides. The first thing is methodology. Are you using a method that's established in the literature? Is this something that has been used by other researchers and you're replicating somebody else's method? Or is this something that you're doing without having a previous example of this? You may need to define some terms in your methodology, and I have a handout that I'm going to give you with a few different method sections on it. And take a look at examples 2 and 3 in the handout. They both discuss their methodology. And you also should let your readers know whether or not your project was approved by Human Subjects Committee. Second thing that you're going to want to address are the participants. How many participants did you have in this research project? So for instance, if you did a survey, we're going to want to know how many people you had surveys from. Is it 12 surveys? Is it 1,892 surveys? Just let us know. Focus groups, again, how many participants did you have? If you have demographics, that would be great if we can know how many male, female. If education is important, let us know how many college students you were interviewing, how many high school students, how many post-college, college graduates. You know, it's going to be your call whether or not the demographics are important. Give descriptions for the interviews. So we interviewed 5 people who had recently left domestic violence situations. So things like that are going to be important. In my example here, we selected 100 children from elementary schools near Lee University. 49% of the children were Caucasian, 38% were Hispanic, 10%, etc. The third thing that you're probably going to be dealing with is the selection of your subjects. How did you choose the people who are in your research project? Now, sometimes this is going to be combined with that previous section that I called the participant section, and instead of having 2 discrete sections, participants and selection of subjects, you'll just have these smushed together, and that's cool, that's fine. So one of the things that we're really going to want to know in this part is, did you have a random or a non-random selection of the people in your research project? And I have been teaching at Lee since 2005, and I don't think I've had a single student do an actual random study at Lee University. We should have already talked about random and non-random for most of you, but it's possible if we have somebody doing a special topics that this might not have been brought up because it wasn't pertinent to your special topics. So if this wasn't a big conversation in your class, don't worry about it, because that means you have a non-random study that you've done. Because if it was random, we certainly would have talked about it before now. So for most of you, it really is non-random. And as I said, I don't think I've had anyone do a random study in all the years I've been at Lee University. So what type of non-random do you have? One of the big possibilities is that you have done an availability sample, also called a convenience sample. Either term is fine, and this is really common. You are surveying or interviewing people that you have easy access to. So this is when you talk to people in your dorm, maybe people that you know on Facebook, or you've gone to the cafeteria or the PCSU, and you're just approaching people to interview or talk to that are easily accessible. Now, I find sometimes people get this confused with the random because you think, okay, I'm in the PCSU and I have no idea who's going to come in here, and so I'm just going to talk to random people whether I know them or not. And just the fact that you're talking to random people does not make it a random subject selection. It's a much higher a bar that we have to set for what it means to be random. So that's a convenience sample and it's non-random. All right. A snowball sample is another possibility. Maybe 10 to 15% of the studies that students do at Lee are snowball samples. So maybe you don't really have an availability sample there, a convenience sample that you just can go to. Maybe you want to talk to people who are NASCAR racing fans, but you only know one person who is a NASCAR racing fan. So you go talk to that one person. And after you interview that person, they say, hey, I know you could talk to my neighbor. She loves NASCAR too. And you're like, okay, great. I'll talk to your neighbor. And I'll ask your neighbor if she'll talk. And the neighbor may talk to you, or the neighbor may say, yeah, I'm not going to do an interview, but my mother-in-law loves NASCAR and she likes to talk about it, so let me put you in contact with her. So you call that mother-in-law. Yes, she wants to talk, and by the way, she will also recommend her best friend. So this is a snowball sample, and that's not uncommon at all. Now, it's not real detailed how you have to put this in the methods section. It's actually just going to be in one sentence. This was a non-random availability sample, and so it might just be one sentence where you say what your selection of subjects were. The procedures. This is the fourth topic that you want to address, and this is really that process, the who, what, where, when, why, how. So surveys, we want to know who gave the surveys, where were they given, when were they given, was there extra credit involved if it was in a classroom, was there kind of incentive, did they get, were they entered into a drawing for a gift card, where were interviews or where were surveys held? Was this a pen and paper survey, or was this a survey that was done online? So who was present for it? Things like that. For the interviews, where did the interview take place? Who's there? Was this just you, the interviewer, and one interview subject, or were there other people in the room? Just let us know. It's not really right or wrong if there are other people in the room. It's just good to know because it could color a little bit of how much somebody is going to reveal. So if we know that the interview took place in front of a classroom with 30 people observing, we're probably going to realize that there's a different level of disclosure than if the interview was privately done with just the interviewer and that interview subject. So when did the interviews happen? And we don't have to be super precise about this, but we should be able to give a general idea of when the interviews happened. So in this case, they happened during the spring semester 2017, or the interviews happened May 2017. Here's an example. An examiner interviewed children individually at their school in one session that lasted 20 minutes on average. The examiner explained to each child that he or she would be told 2 short stories and that some questions would be asked after each story. All sessions were videotaped so the data could later be coded. Fifth thing that you're probably going to want to mention are the materials that you used for your particular research project. Now, for some of you, there aren't going to be any materials, and that's okay. But if you did have materials, this would be the time when we would let our reader know about it. So if you are using any particular type of established measure, this would be a survey. Let's say you did something and you used the Myers-Briggs inventory. that would be a material that you would want to say that you used. Or if you wanted to use the Gallup's strengths, that would be a measure that you would want to use. If you had people hooked up to polygraph machines, that would be a material that we would want to let people know about. And so for many of you that's at Lee University in Comm Research, this is not going to be something that you're going to be including, but it's possible that you might need to use this. Sixth thing to consider would be including information about an experiment design. Now, honestly, again, this is one at Lee University we really probably aren't going to be using. I don't think I've had anyone run an experiment that I can remember. I could be wrong, but I can't recall anyone doing an experiment. But if you did an experiment, you would want to describe how it was designed, what were the variables you need to make sure that we know the dependent, independent variables, and let your readers understand what happened and how this was designed so they can know whether or not your results are valid. Remember, if you're in COM 499, this will be around 4 to 8 paragraphs. That's 1 to 2 pages that you will have this in writing. If you're in COM 300, this will be a PowerPoint presentation most likely, and this will take a couple slides. Well, anywhere from 2 to 5 slides would probably be great for this. You're just going to provide enough detail that another researcher could reproduce your experiment, but you do want to be brief. And always write this in the past tense. The methods that you used are in the past. They happened at one time, so even though we use a lot of present tense in writing about research, this section will always be in the past tense. Avoid any unnecessary detail that's not relevant to the outcome of the analysis. So for example, you did a number of interviews, and let's say that everyone came in wearing jeans. Great, they wore jeans. It might be interesting to you, but it's probably not something that you would mention in here unless there's a reason for it. Everyone came in wearing pink shirts, or everyone had a ponytail. This is the type of thing we're not going to talk about unless there seems to be a reason for it. So let's say that all of our interview subjects were women who are engineers. Then we think about it and we go, okay, why are all of our interview subjects engineers? Is there a reason? Is this pertinent? And maybe it's pertinent because it was a convenience or a snowball sample, or maybe this is something that is of interest to women who are engineers. So if it's relevant, you're going to bring it in. If it's not relevant, we don't talk about it. And we try to use we do use the proper APA format, the American Psychological Association format. So remember, if you don't have a book with APA format, all you have to do is Google APA and OWL, OWL, and you'll get a great website from Purdue University that gives you excellent instructions on writing your paper using APA. So don't forget to use that resource. All right, can't wait to see your methods sections, and I look forward to reading more about your research.